graceful beyond.
The world today is, in a word, fucked. We've got class warfare, propaganda, all that happy bullshit. But we're not going to focus on that right now, because as any good tradesman can tell you, focusing on the mess and not the cause is just going to make a bigger mess in the future and more problems way down the line. And this isn't going to be a new message. This isn't going to be anything that hasn't been said a million times, but things bear repeating if they're important. What I want to talk about today is perspective, or more specifically, changing your perspective and recognizing when it needs to be done. How many times have you been in a discussion with somebody? Just small talk, idle chatter, shooting the shit, talking about things that are happening around you. When you say one seemingly small, innocent thing, and suddenly they get hostile, and it turns into a full-blown argument all over one little thing. And it's usually things that are accepted, more or less nowadays, as common sense in modern times. Like, trans women are women, trans men are men, LGBTQIA plus isn't perversion or corrupting your youth or a sin, that people shouldn't be treated differently because of their skin tone, or perhaps the one that we're having the most trouble with right now, it seems. People deserve to live, no matter their political alignments, or their country of origin, or their perceived citizenship. And how many times, when these arguments break out, have you heard the phrases, well, when I was younger, or, well, that's just my perspective, or, well, that's just my generational lens. You have to understand my viewpoint, blah, 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 yeah. It's a get out of jail free card that relies on the assumption that liberal or left culture is one of weakness, acceptance, and therapy speak. That if there's a hint of generational trauma or misunderstanding, that the person who said this will immediately cause the person who initially brought up the fact that what they said was triggering to back down and soften their stance, and the whole argument can be forgotten and just walked away from scot-free. The problem with this logic is that it is apparent and evidenced that should a person want to and make the effort to do so, perspectives can be changed. Think of it like this. These are my glasses. Specifically, they're a pair that I've had since middle school. My first pair of glasses, if I'm not mistaken. And if I put them on, wow! Look at that! Shit's all blurry! Everything's warped and distorted. And if I wear these for any amount of time, I'm going to get headaches, which is going to make me irritable, and I'm going to be more prone to lashing out because I'm in pain. That's because these don't take into account the changes in my eyes since I got them, the changes in the world around me with LEDs or OLEDs and things like that, new high-def televisions. It doesn't take into account the changing of technology, where we have more digital screens and such, and it doesn't take into account the changes in the method of lens making since I got these. But on the other hand, if I were to take these off and put these on, well, what do you know? Things are a lot clearer now. That's because these do take into account the changes in myself, in the world around me, and the way things are done. So, really, when you think about it, changing your perspective is like taking a vision test. So, when it comes to the argument of when I was younger, queer was still a slur. Gay was used to describe something seen as unimportant or difficult, something you didn't want to do, things that were meant to be fighted, something you got angry at and hated. We didn't call anybody mentally handicapped or developmentally challenged or differently abled. We used a word that, in its original form and in its musical form, means to slow and to hinder. But we all agreed that that's not something anybody would want to be called anymore. So what happened to them? Well, in the case of the first two, they stopped being slurs. And in that third case, we phased it out almost entirely. So the next time someone tells you, that's just my perspective, or that's my generational lens, get your vision checked.